Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today, let me reposition myself properly. Today I wanted to talk about this camera, which we've talked about quite a bit on the channel. That is the Ricoh GR III. Well, technically I don't want to talk about this camera. I want to talk about the next camera that's coming down the line. Ricoh definitely doesn't upgrade their cameras, every year like Sony does. But this camera's been out for quite a while now, several years, and I would kind of anticipate an update maybe in the next year, maybe next 2 years. So I don't know, for the Ricoh GR4, what I wanted to talk about today was Ricoh GR4, what is my wish list for the next iteration of this camera? And I've got like a list of 6 things, and this is not a list that's gonna apply to everybody. This is kind of my personal use case niche list, and what I'd love to see after using this camera, taking thousands of photos with it. What would I like to see change? What would I like to see improved? And what would get me to upgrade to the GR4? So I've got a list of 6 things. I'll try to be as concise as I can be. These 6 are in the order of being least important to me to most important. So the things at the end of the list, if they get upgraded, I'm definitely going to be buying the new GR4. Things at the beginning of the list are, they would be nice to haves. So let's jump in. The first thing I've got on the list is an internal memory upgrade. So if you're familiar with this camera, you'll know that it has 2 gigabytes of internal memory, and I praised the camera for that in my review of it. It's been kind of a trend in last couple years for high-end cameras like the new Leica M11s and the Hasselblad X2Ds to add like a 64 gigabytes, or I think the Hasselblad actually has a terabyte of internal memory. And I would love to see it on the GR4, maybe not a terabyte, I don't need that, but it would be nice to have 16 or 32 gigabytes. I think for the way that I personally use this camera, if that was the case, I would probably never use SD cards with it. I would just take my photos, plug it into USB-C, straight in my computer, pull the photos off, and erase the internal memory. That would be really convenient. It would keep you from ever having the problem of forgetting your SD cards, and that might not work for everybody. And I certainly don't want to see the SD card removed. I would hate to see camera companies move in like the direction of Apple, where they charge you like higher prices for internal memory and then don't give you any ability to expand the storage yourself. Definitely don't do that, right? But I do like the internal memory trend, because if I don't have to have an SD card, I don't necessarily want one. This second thing is kind of a nitpick, but it's something that has just come up again and again as I've used this camera, and that is, I don't even know if you can see this. Okay, so focus. The shutter button here has a little bit of flex and a little bit of play on it in either direction, and this kind of bugs me whenever I'm trying to take like real quick, precise photos. I think you can see that. It would just be nice to see that tightened up, to have no play in the shutter button, and it gives you a little bit more precision in just in taking photos, just everyday life. That's definitely a nitpick, but it is something that I would like to see changed on the GR4. All right, now this next one might be a little bit controversial, but I would like to see Ricoh move to a sensor, maybe something similar to what Fujifilm is now using in their 40 megapixel cameras. And some people are going to say, oh, that's unnecessary, you don't need more megapixels. And I would agree it's not necessary, but I think it would be a nice to have for a couple reasons. Obviously, this is a fixed lens camera at a pretty wide focal length of 28 millimeters, so a focal length equivalent. And it would be nice to have a little bit more cropping ability. Also, this camera does feature some crop modes. You can do like an electronic crop to 35 millimeters, I think, and then 50 millimeters. And I like that idea, but I don't use it very often, because typically when I use it, when you use it, the megapixel count is pretty low on those like 50 millimeter crop files. And so I just tend to kind of stay away from it and do my cropping in post-production, because that doesn't leave you a lot of wiggle room to play with. So I would personally like to see a upgrade in the megapixels. It's not essential, but I think it would be a benefit if it happened, at least for me personally. Number 4 is one that I talked about in my review, and that is video quality. And I'm not talking about 4K 60, I'm just talking about something like what the Leica Q gives you, the Fujifilm X100 gives you, like basic video. Really all I want, I don't even need 4K, I just want good quality 1080 60p and I would be happy. Now this camera does offer 1080 60, but if you've ever used it, first of all, the autofocus is so bad that you can tap the screen on exactly what you want it to focus on and it just like isn't lost in its own little world. Not only that, but the footage that comes out of this camera kind of looks more like 720, like old footage off old cameras. It's just not good. And every once in a while, I do find that I want to take a short little video clip, and I love the fact that this has in-body image stabilization, which is one of its best features in my opinion. And so it would be nice just to be able to grab a little short clip of something and you know, use it, stitch it into a project or whatever. And if you did have 40 megapixels, you might be able to crop in, take some video on the sensor itself. So that's just that's one thing that I would like to see. I would appreciate that. This 5th one is, I think, kind of a pie in the sky. I don't know, maybe not. This is something that I would immediately put my debit card into Amazon and buy the GR3 or the GR4 if it happened, and that is a pop-up EVF. Now some of you are gonna be like, no, that's craziness. You can't put a pop-up EVF in a camera this small. That's not true, because if you've ever seen the Sony RX100 series, they have a pop-up EVF in a body that is basically the same size as this. Now, somebody's going to say, oh, well, you know, that's a 1-inch sensor and this is an APS-C and that's the reason. And I'll grant that, you know, that's probably some of the reason that it's not shown up on any of the previous versions. But I personally would be willing to sacrifice a little extra length in the camera, a little extra height in the camera maybe, or you know, or thickness one way or another, if a pop-up EVF could be implemented, something like the Sony RX100 or the Sony RX1. The RX1 is a full frame camera, so that's an argument that it definitely can be done. That would make this camera, in, to me personally, like undefeatable in the compact range. Like, forget the RX100V, forget whatever Fujifilm comes out with next. That would be something. Okay, and then finally, kind of along the same lines, I would love to see them implement a rotating back screen. Not a full articulating screen, but just a one-way or two-way rotating screen, so you could tilt the screen up or tilt the screen down, something like what's in the RX100 series, something like what's in the X100V series. They've shown that you can add a tilt screen without adding a lot of bulk to the back of the camera. I live in North Africa. This country in the summer is so sunny that you can't even find a cloud in the sky. So I take the Ricoh GR III out, and a lot of times I can't really see what I'm shooting, can't frame properly, my screen's washed out, I'm kind of shooting in the dark, well, shooting in the light, which causes my screen to be dark. And I find myself a lot of times taking out my Olympus, which I'm shooting on right now, because it has the electronic viewfinder. And it's so nice to be able to hold your eye up to the viewfinder to actually see what you're shooting. Well, one thing that would remedy this to some extent would be to have a tilt screen on the back, because then you can at least tilt it to adjust for kind of the glare of the sun and get, you know, the ideal angle. And it would also allow you to shoot better from the hip, shoot better above your head. I think it would be an all-around improvement. They implemented it on the Leica Q3 in this last iteration. I have a feeling most Ricoh shooters would appreciate it. I don't know, let me know if you disagree, but I would really love to see, and I think it would be enough for me to upgrade if the new screen came out on the camera. That's definitely top of my priority list. So those are the 6 things that I thought of for what I would love to see in the Ricoh GR4. Let me know if yours are the same or if you have some other suggestions. Put them down in the comments. I know a lot of people would like to see like the dust issue improved, or this ring on the back right there. It breaks on a lot of these cameras, and I can confirm that mine doesn't work great. you know, for me, both of those issues are like, yeah, definitely fix those as quality issues. But I wanted to talk about some of my wish list here. So let me know down in the comments what you think, and hopefully I'll talk to you guys soon.